Everybody, this is the road committee, and we're looking at architectural firms to help design, build a new road department in Franklin County. With that being said, our special guest, next presenter is OHM architectural firm, and Mr. Bob Pelosi, who happens to be from Frankfurt, is here to represent the firm and introduce who you've got to make the presentations today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Judge. Like you said, my name is Bob Pelosi. I'm with OHM Advisors. I'm born and raised here in Frankfurt. Been back here since about 2019 and working on establishing an office here, actually working on negotiating a lease right now here, right down the street. So we've got an office in Louisville. Prior to coming back here, I was in Nashville for about 10 years. Been with the firm since 2013. We're about 600 people, architecture, engineering, planning, surveying, landscape architecture, full service firm across the Midwest and Mid-South. And for this project, we've brought on a couple local partners, Deco Architects, Derek Phillips, Todd Halsley with Cornerstone Engineering, and Michelle Hallett with Magna Engineers. So I will let Derek introduce himself and talk about Deco for just a minute.
So I'm Derek Phillips. I'm the president of Deco Architects. So we're a bit smaller than OHM. We are currently a 12-person firm. We're in Pulaski County. So I'm a regular at the Wayne County Fiscal Court, Pulaski County Fiscal Court, but never had the luxury of being at Franklin County.
You're in for a treat.
That's what I go for. Usually
I didn't say that. I thought about it.
So again, we're a staff of 12. We've been in business now. We're celebrating our 10-year anniversary. So we'll get into us a bit deeper later, but that's us. I'm an architect, in short.
Okay. Your staff.
Todd?
My name is Todd Halsey. I'm with Cornerstone Engineering. We are a structural consulting firm. Office is headquartered in Louisville. We also have a office in Nashville, Tennessee. I am the engineering manager here. We do structural engineering for all types of facilities, industrial, commercial, institutional. We get into renovations, additions, as well as new construction.
Okay.
Michelle?
Hi, I'm Michelle Hallett. I'm the president of Magna Engineers. We are mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection engineers. Our main office is in Lexington, and we have a branch office in Louisville. So we would be providing mechanical, electrical support for this project. We've done some work in Frankfurt, done some work at the wastewater plant, also with Department of Military Affairs. But obviously haven't had a chance to work with you guys yet. So hoping we have that opportunity.
All right, thank you. Scotty, you want to go first?
Yeah,
You're up at the top.
absolutely. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. My name is Scotty Tracy, and I'm 4th District Magistrate.
Stephen?
Stephen Hawkins Smith. I'm the assistant road supervisor.
John?
I'm John Mitchell. I am the road supervisor.
You will, that's your man. And Stephen too. Okay. Ann?
I'm Ann Northcutt, Community Development Grants Administrator.
Okay. And you know me as Judge Wells, so we turn the floor over to you, and we'll just have a discussion. You all speak, tell us from the start to the beginning what you want to say and present, and then we'll kind of just chime in along. Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, our intention is to keep this presentation pretty informal and conversational. We decided not to go with a structured PowerPoint slide presentation. So instead we prepared this placemat that's got some graphics and some text bullets that we can use to kind of guide our discussion and leave behind. So we're trying to look for practical way to approach this. I think during one of the fiscal court meetings, John said, when y'all were asking him about this project, I think his words were, "We don't need a Taj Mahal." So we've heard that and we understand that, and then that's how we're going to approach this project is simple and straightforward, and just listen to what you all need and want out of it. So a little bit more about ourselves before we get into the specifics. I'm a civil engineer, but I will be the project manager here as the local point of contact. The way our team is structured, I would be the primary point of contact for the fiscal court and the staff, and provide access to our consultant team. I'm here with a couple miles from the project site and from the offices. So that's one benefit you all would have, is having somebody who knows the community. I've worked with Robert's office quite a bit. I know the local utility staff and just how the process of new construction works in Franklin County. So having that local presence could help you all get this project on the ground efficiently. I know time is something that you all talked about as being a priority, wanting to get this thing moving pretty quickly. And it's clear there's a need. The existing road department facility, I stopped by there a week or so ago and introduced myself to Stephen and John, walked the site a little bit, and it's pretty clear that facility is at the end of its functional life. So thank you to you guys for making the investment in our community and looking to serve our needs into the future. So I want to just talk a little bit about what we understand at this point as the project. On the back of this placemat, or page 2, for those of you all that are looking at the PDF copy.
Okay, I thought you had.
I sent this.
Oh, you give it to Andrew? Okay.
You all have the placemat up. Yeah. So there's a site map here on the lower left side of the back page. This is taken from the county PVA website. So there's 2 parcels there. I don't know the exact area, but my estimation is about 4.5 acres. My understanding is the county is in the process of purchasing
Yes, that, and then another piece
and a
back.
piece from the Harold Mays property.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, I noticed that you all were using that space a little bit already, and I wasn't gonna.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
We're not good neighbors.
Yeah.
So and that was one question I had was, is part of the consultant scope going to be doing the boundary survey and consolidating these and, preparing a consolidation plat? or-
Jared Stevens is doing that right now.
Okay.
As we speak.
I know Jared will, so he's doing the consolidation plat.
Yes, sir.
Good to know. So we'll be working with the consolidated parcel. Is he going to do a topographic survey also, or?
I haven't asked him to, just boundary and consolidation.
Okay, well, we have local survey and I've worked with Jared on quite a few projects also. So if he's already under contract, and that may be an effective way to handle that, is just have Jared go ahead and do the topo, at least for the portions of the site that we expect would be part of the new project.
Sure. I'll speak to the judge about that and the road committee, when we wrap up, because, we want to get that taken care of sooner than later.
So good. We're looking at 4 and 4.5 acre site. Our understanding is the existing barn, kind of in the middle of the site, is going to be the focal point of the project. Likely approaches to demolish that structure and replace with a new facility. And in the orange box is some items that I've listed out here that we've heard you all discussing as things you may want to see as part of the project. And
Can all of y'all see that are on, Scotty and John and Stephen? Can you see it? Okay.
I don't think Scotty can.
I can. I thought Andrew was going to email it to me.
I emailed it just a few minutes ago. Did you not receive it?
No, not that one. I received the first one, but not that one, Andrew.
Okay, I'll send it again.
Okay, thank you.
You got it. You can pull it up on. Sorry, we thought everyone was going to be in the room, so I
Sure.
misunderstood that.
And Andrew, is it judges okay if he just screen shares that?
Yeah, go ahead and screen share it, Andrew, for the moment.
And So while he's pulling that up, we recognize and you're gonna have an active construction project going on a site here, while you're still gonna be
Yes.
maintaining
Yeah.
your operations. And
Yeah.
in our eyes, and what we've heard you all say is that's gonna be one of the critical components to making this a successful project, is making this as small amount of the smallest headache it's going to be for Stephen and John and their staff.
Functionality.
Being able to keep them doing the things they need to do with road maintenance and their department's responsibilities. And I think that's part of where the construction manager could come into play, but really that process is going to start with day one of how we lay out the project and thinking about constructability and logistics from the onset of deciding where this new building even going to go, how it orients on the site, how you're going to get to it, how it's going to be served by utilities, what pieces and how this site is used today and where things can be relocated. I've heard you all talk a little bit about possibly have some off-site options. We've got the existing administrative office building as you pull into the site.
Andrew, would you flip it, the page? We're on the other page. There you go. There you go. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine. Thank you, Judge. But we understand the focus is going to be on that main barn. But where we would start from an approach, how we would do this project is just observing how the road department works, how they're using this facility today. Probably have some interview time with Stephen and John to get a better understanding of their operations, inventory their fleet, know what kind of equipment they have, where it's being stored now, where they'd like to have it in the future, staff counts, who needs an office, who doesn't, meeting rooms, all those types of program elements that need to go in this building. We would want to hear first from the staff and then from the elected officials and listen to your feedback before we ever start drawing a building footprint, a floor plan, a site plan. So that would be what we would call the programming and needs assessment. And if you go back to the front, I've got an example here of how we got started with a much larger city hall project, but nonetheless, the idea is the same. These diagrams on the right edge, there's a pie chart and then kind of a gridded space. And it's just a color-coded illustration of what we found after we interviewed all the department heads and the staff at this particular city, and how much space was allocated to each department. And in the case of the road department, that may be how much space you need for each of your functions, how much vehicle storage, how much maintenance area, how many office spaces, and kind of illustrate that to you in this sort of format, and then look at the adjacencies of what functions need to be next to each other, how do things circulate, to really just portray the scale and magnitude of the plan before we ever draw anything. And then that might get accompanied by an illustrative site plan like you're seeing here at the bottom. That's really not an engineered plan yet.
Andrew, would you please switch it back over?
Sorry about the format here. This was intended for an in-person audience. I apologize.
That's all right.
So yeah, we would likely start there because this would give you all enough information to give us feedback. We need more space for dump truck storage, or no, we don't need this much office space or conference room before we ever spend the time laying out a footprint. So once we go through that process with you, on our recommendations and then incorporating your feedback, we would couple that with zoning analysis, codes analysis to really start to define what the project looks like before we move into the step we would call schematic design. So we think that needs assessment and programming stage could start immediately while the survey and site visits and things were going on. And that process would probably last about a month from the start of the project. And then we would report back and get your feedback and move into schematic design. And that stage is when we're starting to do those preliminary drawings. We're looking at the building layout. You start to see the elevations, maybe some color renderings, some building sections. And at this point, we're working with the construction manager. We're preparing narrative descriptions of structural systems, how the building is built, what mechanical, electrical systems would be incorporated, so that we can start to develop a pre-construction budget for the project. I've heard you say, Judge Wells, that $4 million has kind of been set as a starting point. We think
Hopefully it's an ending point, but.
well, just as,
Yeah.
we think that's a
Yeah.
totally reasonable budget number for this type of work. And we've got some ideas as to how to maximize that dollar value in terms of what you get out of it. But with having a CM on board, with getting to a point at the end of schematic design that they can do a preliminary project budget to make sure that we're in line with those budgetary expectations before we.
How would you all work together, a CM and you all? Tell us what the ideal situation with the CM and architect.
Well, assuming the CM is on board at the start of the project.
Real close.
Yeah, or right
In
there,
design,
like,
probably yeah, let's just say yes, okay?
we would want that person or that group participating in our early design meetings to get their input on, things like we're going to be looking at pre-engineered metal building option. We could also be looking at masonry construction, wood truss, and understanding the cost differences between those two approaches, or the schedule impacts that, there may be some benefit. It may cost a little more to go one way, but you may be able to save time on the schedule and weighing those priorities in your eyes of budget, schedule, quality, all those things, and having the general contractor perspective to advise us on pricing and construction logistics and really inform the design team. Derek, you got anything to add?
And if we may, not to be too forward, but when you do interview construction managers, it's our opinion that the value of a construction manager is through the design process, to offer us all the budget feedback, all the guidance on timelines for material deliveries, et cetera. But that tends to be the part that a construction manager is less interested in, because they generally don't start making money until bid day. So as you interview, it would be important to us, if selected, or whoever you do select as your designer, that you do get that feedback, because that's really the value of a construction manager.
So so what you're saying, you feel it's important that you all, or could you be part of an interview process for a CNE?
Yes.
Would you be in the room and listen to?
Absolutely. We've had projects, this city hall project here that these adjacency diagrams come from. Rather than the community hiring a construction manager, it was a much longer design process, but our consultant team included a general contractor for pre-construction consulting that we had on our team to provide those pre-design services, and they were just paid a fee rather than, and one thing that was important to them that I was going to ask you all about your construction manager, as a general, if that construction manager is also a general contractor, would the role of CM make them ineligible to become the GC for the project, or could the construction manager also build it if they chose to bid on it?
We haven't excluded that option.
No.
Opportunity.
Because I don't know what type of response you've gotten on that, but I would imagine that a lot of the outfits that provide construction management services also provide general contracting.
Right, you're right.
Some of them may want to remain eligible to do the work.
Sure. One of the things that we as the fiscal court have always felt important to our community is that we use local contractors, subcontractors as much as possible. So and we'll use the $4 million concept that we use as much of that money locally as we can. that supports our community. That's important to us.
And our procurement standards reflect that.
So if you do pursue the construction management model, one advantage to that is they tend to take all the subcontracts and they break them apart as packages. So they're going to let out bids for electrical and mechanical, et cetera. You could leverage that because I've also heard you say that timeline is a major factor. You could leverage that to do breakout construction packages and maybe get, if this goes pre-engineered, get your building ordered early because timelines are an issue. As we know, the economy has issues right now.
Well, yeah, so I'll be upfront with you. We just heard that steel is 6 to 9 months out.
And electrical's worse, not to step on Michelle's toes. But
Yeah.
we're having a hard time to
Yeah,
switch
yeah.
gears.
So I mean, I think do we want to get it built as soon as possible? But I think we have now, excuse me, guys, I don't mean to speak for you, but we're realistic in what's happening with our economy.
And that's something
today.
that Derek and I talked about before we came in here was, we understand that schedule and timeline is important to you all. But to me, I'm guessing that shortening the amount of time that site is actively under construction may be more important than getting a facility online by a particular calendar date.
Yeah.
So, and that's where that CM advice really becomes valuable is, they're dealing in the world of the construction industry day in and day out with material suppliers, subcontractors that, they're going to have a better read on that than we will as designers, just because they live and breathe it day in and day out. So it may end up that the start of the project gets pushed in the interest of shortening the time frame of active construction. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to get out there and start doing site work and utility construction and grading and foundations if you're going to be waiting around for 3 months for your building package to show up and you've got, you've torn down your building and then you're just in a period of waiting.
Exactly.
And more to follow that, I think the phasing of the project as it relates to the specific activities that the road department does seasonally, those need to match up.
Yes.
Because because we're building on the same site we're operating out of. So
Right. And
that's what big part of our discussion that we've had.
And so those are all pieces and parts that we would like to explore during the schematic phase and programming phases, because there's so much interconnection and ripple effect of decisions. So, choosing to go a pre-engineered metal building route versus a masonry construction truss roof has code implications and square footage requirements and all sorts of things that may not be just focused on which option is cheaper, which option, but there's broader things to consider. And Derek and his group have actually gone ahead and done an initial codes analysis to start to understand some of those things. So Derek, do you want to walk through kind of some of the assumptions you've made?
Andrew have this.
So,
Yeah.
yes.
Does he?
Yeah, Andrew, this is the second attachment within that email, or maybe it was in a separate email. but
Deco,
The one with the green header at the top.
can you pull it up, Andrew? Deco Architects.
Yes. So we wanted to be somewhat careful with making assumptions of your program for this building. So we had to make some assumptions. We assumed that we got several of them incorrect, but we have to start somewhere. So we stalked your last fiscal court meeting where you all were discussing this. We took and extracted all the information we could, and then we just kind of, let's throw it out as a starting point. So if we miss the mark, please give us some mercy. But what we're trying to do is just get a general understanding of the project and see how the code will shape it. We don't want the code to be the number one thing that controls our lives, but we also don't want to get too deep that we miss something. So something you all discussed in your meeting was you are aware of that 5,000 square foot rule versus the 12,000 square foot rule. So the 5,000 kicks in if you're working on commercial equipment, 12,000 applies if you're not commercial. So we want to outline that type of stuff right now, because imagine if we got 3 months into this process and then you brought us back for that meeting and we said, oh, by the way, we just discovered we have an issue because you have commercial equipment. So anyway, we're just starting to get those thoughts on paper. And it's all just kind of schematic at this point. But as we work through it, our assumptions are you're going to demolish that barn fully. We think we're going to build back in that general vicinity is what we hear you say. We think that your minimum is to have 4 service bays, and we imagine that it's kind of like Scott counties where they pull through. So you have like 2 and 2, you can pull through and do a big long one if you like. We measured their building and they're like 90 feet wide. So they're pulling like when Bob went and took pictures, they actually had an F-250 with like a 24-foot trailer behind it. And they're fitting that in one bay. So, you know, I don't know if that's the general scale you want to look at. But in short, we need to make a determination up front about, is the 5,000 square foot going to hit us or the 12,000 square foot going to hit us? Is a sprinkler a critical issue for you all? Do you want a sprinkler? Do you want to avoid it? We assumed, based on what we heard from you, that you would like to avoid it. We assume that you don't really work on commercial equipment. We don't think you're going to pull your dump trucks in there and try to lift them. We think you're working on emergency service type vehicles and roadway.
No, it'd be dump trucks.
It'd be dump trucks, yeah.
But they're not commercial, they're county owned.
Okay.
Well,
I
it goes,
don't know how that works.
it goes back to the building code. There was the exception when we were dealing with Fire Station 10 that emergency apparatus are not considered commercial vehicles. Now, of
Okay.
course, we weren't building a road department then, so we didn't get an opinion on.
Right. And some of that we're at the mercy of an interpretation. We'll have to see if we're going to work through from a code, and that also, depending on the scale of this project, and if you're going to do things like try to store salt in there, if you can avoid some of those things, we may be able to keep it local. If you can keep it local, then we can get easier opinions on how they're going to interpret the code.
Right, and if I recall correctly, you're not required to have a CDL to drive a fire apparatus, but you are for equipment at the road department. So.
And some of that will be, you know, that type of information we'll be gathering that very early, just getting a better understanding of how John and Stephen's operation is run, you know, what their typical day looks like and how they're using the existing site. When I went out there, you know, is it correct, John or Stephen, that barn is primarily used for storage today, and that what we're looking at in the future could be more of an active use building? I mean, I think you've got another 2-bay garage that looked to be more of your mechanic shop. Are you using the barn primarily for storage today?
Yeah, that's all it is vehicle storage, basically, right now.
And then you've got the barn or the garage there next to your office building that you're using as your mechanic shop. So, you know, part of this preliminary site plan exercise will be possibly looking at the whole site as an entirety, whether or not all of that becomes part of the initial construction contract, of establishing a future vision as to, you know, maybe there's a phase 2 down the road where you're making some improvements or building new canopy storage for vehicles outside. Or is there a portion of this new building that's, you've got the active bays for mechanic use, and then a storage component as well, where you're putting, you know, equipment, tires, tools. We've heard some of that, but are we also parking vehicles in there full time that aren't just being worked on? And how much space is needed? Those are all going to kind of both inform what the building looks like and the code implications,
Right.
That drive some of the building system decisions.
So obviously,
Another piece of that is John's just about to receive a whole lot more salt, and we're going to have to keep salt covered. It's in, as you probably see, it's in one of those storage units, and so those probably going to have to end up going as well. I don't know what part of, whether that's after another set are built, but we're going to have to do something in some form or fashion to have a better salt holding areas.
it affects your building because it changes the classification of what the use group is.
So we would probably look at either salt dome or some other kind of detached storage.
Right.
Yeah.
Without really studying it, I think it pushes you towards spring.
And that's the type of stuff that that we would like to, start to look at a master plan, if you will, of the whole site and how it could be used in the future and how you phase that. Maybe we start with replacing this barn and building this new garage facility. But then once that's done and occupied, then their operations can shift into that. And then you start to turn your attention to, as funding allows, to upgrading some of these other accessory structures that are out there today. One thing that we know is a need is improved office space, for John and Stephen and their foreman and their administrative staff. And they've got the existing office building there that looks to be about 1,500 square feet, give or take. Depending on how the program shakes out, we could explore the potential of rehabilitating that space, renovating that space, and incorporating some type of the desired use, whether it be, the employee lounge with kitchen and break room, or, maybe we just redo the office space in there, because it does look like a building that's in decent shape with a little love and attention could, become more functional space for current and future needs at a much lower cost per square foot than building that space into the new building. So those are options we'd like to consider exploring.
Yeah, however, we have talked about putting building a new office space as part of the building.
Right, and that's what I'm saying is it'd be our recommendation to look at both options. Just because of the sheer cost of building nowadays, is that, if you've got a building where the structure is good, the roof is, the systems are good. If all we need to focus on is interior renovations and changing the layout and the use, your money can go a little bit further versus build. And whether that's, the new office space or that becomes some other kind of use function, it's still a decent building out there that could potentially be repurposed and money stretched a little bit.
Yeah, that building does serve as a pivot point for our dark fiber and VoIP telephone system.
Okay.
Judge.
FYI there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't see, I don't see, Andrew, I guess you can take that off. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
You're
Scotty.
fine. Bobby, quick question, and hopefully they'll chime in. I think looking at the site in general, I think it would be an injustice not to look at it as a whole. Unfortunately, we just spent a lot of money on the admin office through the energy savings project. But if you don't look at it as a whole, I'm not sure that you're going to get the proper flow and things of that nature. Would you agree?
Absolutely, I agree. That's exactly what our recommendation is to look at the site as a whole and kind of at a master plan level, and whether or not the budget may allow for completely new construction of all the, of everything you want on the initial construction contract. You've at least got a plan in place as to where things are now, where they can go in the future, and how to phase that and use it in between. But yeah, definitely take the holistic approach and look at it,
Right.
At a 30,000-foot view from the onset.
Right. Okay. I appreciate that. I just think I think that's the way we have to do it. Yeah, I do believe it's going to be a hard sell to the members of the court to look at trying to make, I think it was referenced that the admin office is storage facility. I think that's going to be a hard sell considering it was part of a energy savings project. So there was quite a bit of money dumped into it just to turn it over to a storage facility. So I think that will be a tough sell moving forward.
Do you, if we got just a second, do you know any of the specifics about what those improvements were?
That weren't that much.
Robert does.
John, would you explain what went on there? I think there's only a few lights and a toilet were done. Go ahead, John.
That was it. Some lighting and water saving stuff. I think they replaced the toilet. It wasn't a huge, no.
Well, our recommendation and starting point would always be, to take the more sustainable approach, to look at rehabbing and refurbishing an existing building and making the highest and best use out of what you've already got, you know, whether that, if storage proves to be that need, then it may be that, but, you know, there's several things you all talked about, and some things that haven't been discussed that we would possibly get into. I mean, meeting space, conference rooms, training rooms, that may be something that you want to look at, and possibly some of those uses could go in there. You know, we've talked about the code impacts of oil and gas and petroleum products and storing those. You know, we've discussed internally about the possibility of a separate storage building just for those types of products, and a containment system that would remove that from the larger structure and maybe help out with code compliance by having a separate facility that's dedicated for that type of use. So all those decisions and options that need to be weighed have to start with that whole master plan process and programming and deciding, you know, what we do now, what we want to do tomorrow, and planning for those upgrades.
When you look at this is moving on to another step of it, but when we look at the bays, what are your thoughts on trenching or just having lifts in the bay areas?
We do several service facilities for the private sector, for car dealerships and things, and they've all, for the most part, moved to lifts and have gotten away from the pits.
Okay, yeah.
Now the type of lift that's a longer conversation, but
Yeah, I mean, when, you know, understanding the design parameters of what we're actually going to be lifting up. I mean, lifting up pickup trucks and single axle dump trucks may be one thing, and lifting up backhoes and triaxle trucks may be a different type of equipment that could have impacts on the building floor, slab, foundation, the structure that all that equipment's mounted to, you know, from the ground up. So what those design loads look like. But yeah, I think lifts are probably the preferred approach from a safety standpoint. You know, part of our process would be bringing on a geotechnical firm and doing a geotechnical investigation to understand the subsurface conditions of the building site, which will inform decisions related to foundation design and excavations and earthwork, which could drive the design decision one way or the other based on what the site conditions are.
so can we circle back to what kind of dump trucks you actually intend to lift?
Tandems, drives.
And trying.
John, you want to answer that?
Maybe we do need a pit.
I don't know whether they like a pit or not.
No, I don't. It'll be, yeah, tracks will be the biggest we have, and you know, there's lifts out there that are for those, but you know, they're not cheap, that's for sure.
No.
Right.
Do y'all do maintenance on any other county vehicles that are not road department? Does the road department mechanics work on sheriff's vehicles and ambulances and things like that?
Not ambulances. John, you want to answer that question to more succinct?
Yeah, we just do our own in-house. No, we don't work on much other outside stuff, and really not interested in.
It did for a while, and they'd rather not.
The fire department has their own mechanic as well now.
Good to know. So today, John, what are you all doing for vehicle lifts, engine hoists, anything like that, or you all have anything?
No, there's no lifts. The pit was filled in. We had a pit in this building years ago, but because of the safety concerns, the pit got filled in. And we do have a overhead chain hoist. Basically, that's about it, but no, there's no lifting power at all.
So as far as the mechanic facilities go, some other things that we thought about would be worthy of discussion were oil distribution system. What, you know, if you've got oil drums and you're using hoses to, rather than having cans, you know, do you have a system like that, or hydraulic, compressed air tools, you know,
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
pneumatic hose lines, welding equipment? Is that something y'all, a welding shop?
Yep, would be included in all of it, yes, sir.
Definitely have some impacts on, you know, your electrical needs and fire protection systems, all those. How the space is used is going to dictate a lot of design decisions. Let's see. About water, do y'all have any kind of water storage or not for non-potable water, or is that something you may want to incorporate?
No, I don't think that's something that we would need, no.
Okay, fueling, diesel.
Yeah, we have an on-site fuel tank right now for diesel, but that's only diesel, so yeah, that's something we have to keep around here.
Is that above ground?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, that all those things need to work together, and you want to be able to have an efficient operation that puts things where they need to be and adjacent to one thing. You know, I've heard you talk a couple times, John, about your concern about the office space being inside the garage, you know, separating that out from a noise perspective, smells, foot traffic, whatever that may be. And we keep kind of going back to Scott County because that's a newer facility nearby, and I know you all have toured it. What it looks like they did there was they had a garage and then kind of had an attached portion, but it was almost a separate space that housed their offices. Another approach to that would be, you know, one kind of rectangular structure that internally had a demising wall that may be, you know, have a ceiling over it with some mezzanine storage above it. And there would have to be some design elements incorporated that provided that noise barrier, the zoned heating and cooling, which brings up a good point. Do you all anticipate the garage portion of the building to be conditioned, air, heat, or partially conditioned, like we talked about a little bit?
So we would assume you would partially condition it and just heat the bays.
John, is that what you were thinking?
I'm sure they'd love it to be conditioned, but I'm sure our budget's not going to allow that. You know, I mean, we have to go ahead and figure out the best way to heat it, but you know, I don't know if there is, you know, a possibility of dividers or whatever to maybe condition part of it. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, so kind of what we assumed is that you would, in the eyes of the code, you either condition, you partially condition, or you do nothing. We would assume in that garage, you would at least partially condition and get a little heat running through the winter to keep it manageable.
Yeah, I would think heat would be a must throughout it.
So when you do that, it relaxes the insulation requirements a bit, but we would encourage you to insulate it anyway.
Sure.
And we understand there's some realities of life, and this nice summer day, you're gonna roll all the doors up and just kind of let it breathe and work that way. But on the cold days, it'd be nice to put those doors down and have a decently insulated garage.
Absolutely.
And if a portion of the facility is dedicated strictly for just storing vehicles and not necessarily active working space, you may want to treat that and partition that off differently so that you don't need to spend the money on heat. And, you know, if you're just parking dump trucks and equipment in there and not work space, you may want to treat that differently. So that's really going to be our focus is listening and studying you all and how you work to really put together a set of plans that gives you the things that you want to serve your operation.
What kind of time frame are you looking at? And I like what you're saying about sitting down and working taking what you know and then what their needs are and putting those together to form a plan. So give us a time frame of what you're thinking you'll have a design to
So
go.
if you flip over to the back of your sheet, I put together just a quick estimated project timeline
Okay,
that gets this thing out to bid in 6 months. And there's likely some opportunity to condense that. We did this under the assumption that we would have the construction manager participating. So allowing some time in there to do those interim pricing exercises. To
Tends
make
to slow
sure,
things down just a step. There's an advantage to it, but it does tend to slow it down just a bit, because what happens is we have to design to a certain point and then kick them a package, and then they take the package and price it, and there's a little bit of gap. So just to consider, there's an advantage to it, but there is a little bit of, it draws the timeline out. just a
we
bit.
understand that and we understand that as a piece of it.
to answer your question, Judge, we would expect that we would be coming to this committee and to the fiscal court with preliminary floor plans and site plan layout by, about 2.5 months from the start. And then we would, once we got some feedback on those preliminary plans, we'd move into what's called design development, where we'll really start doing the detailed design, picking materials, writing specifications, doing all the hard engineering to support the preliminary design, detailing out the project. And so we budgeted another 2 months following the schematic planning phase to really get into the design details. So we'd be coming to you kind of around the middle of month 5 with that and we could have periodic progress sets during that 2-month period. So maybe it's a 30, 60, 100, so that, we're meeting every 2 or 3 weeks during design to monitor progress and make sure we're staying in line with the expectations and the early conversations about the what's. And we'd be looking to get construction documents wrapped up about 5-6 months out from the start and get it out on the street for bidding in conjunction with the CM's recommendations.
So CM proposals are due this coming Monday, if I didn't already mention that.
I think that would fall in line with the process pretty well.
Good.
We'll look at, because spring break will be coming up, right by that, so we'll probably be 2 weeks away before we start interviews with CMs.
But yeah, I think 6 months is plenty of time and like I said, I think are some opportunities to overlap some of those tasks and maybe push that more towards a 5-month time frame, so that you could get that project advertised and that construction contract awarded in your current fiscal year, if that's your intention.
And get concrete poured before winter. Right? Hopefully.
I think that's achievable, yes.
It'll start, fall construction.
Okay.
Seems totally doable. And there's some things that we would want to be advised, that as a consultant, we would look to be advising you all on for your own preparedness. I mean, I think John and Stephen probably have quite a bit of work on their plate to get this site ready to have a contractor show up and start working. I mean, there's materials stored there. That barn is full of equipment and, it's been used for a long time. They probably have quite a bit of planning and house cleaning to do to even prepare their site to get ready. So, that's something we would want to start developing, that staging construction logistics plan very early, before we even knew all the details of the building, just so we can kind of define, this is going to be contractor workspace and this is what the road department's going to be left with, so that they can go in there and start those preparations and moving their equipment. And
I think that's critical.
We've heard you talk quite a bit about communication with John and them on just what you're saying, logistics there and functionality. There's another piece of communication, and what are your thoughts on how the process would work for the teams as in you all, teams as in CM, teams as in us, teams as in John, and committee to get together? How do you see that working?
so I've got some experience working in public sector on new design projects and, you know, it's very important to get everybody's input and take that into account and hear all the feedback that you can. But when it comes down to decision making, it's pretty easy to find yourself in a position where you've got a few too many cooks in the kitchen, if you will. So early in the project, you know, designating the responsible parties, you know, from our end, the way our team is set up, I'll be the single point of contact for you, and I will facilitate the communication between the rest of our team and the fiscal court. And our expectation for you all would be kind of the same thing, that there's an established chain of command of who the key decision makers are and who our point of contact is for daily and weekly communication versus, you know, and it could be different. You know, I may be working with Robert on contract matters, and I may be working with John on design, or whoever that may be, or if there's a small committee. In your eyes, Judge, is this something that goes to the full fiscal court periodically during design?
Well, so part of the process that we are used to and that works best for us for the moment, I was listening to you to see if you had a different process, but the committee is always, will be made up of John, Stephen, Robert, and the people that are on here, and the magistrates, the three elected officials would expect to meet at least monthly with you as for updates, changes, those types of things, change orders on your side, change orders on our side, and then what happens then is that the committee would agree that these are the bills and to be paid. So the committee's approval would initially approve those bills to go to the court for full approval.
That's perfectly reasonable. I think, you know, having a committee that meets periodically is valuable and gives opportunity for that feedback loop to occur. But at the same time, someone on that committee is likely to be more involved in the day-to-day execution of the project. And
More likely to be Robert.
That'd be Robert.
He's been our point of contact on most construction committees anyway.
And yeah, that makes perfectly good sense. And so the communication chain would kind of be Robert and I being the links to our respective groups that we report to. So I think that would be a good way to approach this. And then so I've listened to this committee meet a few times and watched how you all work together. And, you know, there may be some opinions one way or the other on certain matters. And those are things that I'm guessing you'll look to your consultant to help you make some of those decisions. Sure. And just inform, you know, maybe make recommendations, but ultimately this is your project and we would be looking to just give you the information that helps you all make decisions on what's best for the community and the operation. But what are the, outside of the committee, what are what's the role of the whole fiscal court in the project process outside of approving the initial contract and then the final?
Obviously they have to approve everything. The committee is not, the committee can approve little small details that it doesn't go to the court, but the plan itself, your all's contract, pay applications and all of that has to goes to the fiscal court.
Would we be making design presentations to the fiscal court throughout the design?
Only when it's complete
that's handled at the committee level.
The committee level works to a point of completion or to at least a point of this is where we want to go. And then the next phase of it, they're not going to get into the minutiae of what color the walls are, or how the doors will look, or anything like that.
I've had projects where, you know, in smaller towns particularly, where the elected officials were really engaged outside of a committee. And it gets to be a challenge on the consultant because you've got a lot of different
I understand.
dynamics going.
We understand that very well. That's why there's a committee.
Great, great.
And,
Well, that's,
and the majority is two. And so we'll get in there and we'll discuss and we'll just take a vote. And this is on those types of things.
that's.
If we can't come to a consensus, normally we always try to get to a consensus. But we've got a good group of people that will all work together and decide how to move forward with, for the best of, the road department and our community.
Judge Wells, do you mind if I ask John a question since we have the MEP engineer on?
No, you don't have.
John, since we have Ms. Howlett on the meeting, are there any special needs or deficiencies that you've identified in your current operation that you want to bring up to her as it relates to, I don't know, adequate power for your welders, or I don't know, just anything like that? What kind of service you have now? Is it?
No, I think we're okay on, our service side. We should have, there's power pretty close, so I think we'll be okay. We can hook on to whatever we need right here. Pretty simple.
And you're served by Frankfurt Plant Board out along Wilkinson Boulevard, is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a transformer on site on your property?
Yeah, there's a pole mounted transformer. There's nothing, all this is overhead.
Is it all single phase?
No, should they got 3 phase?
It's 3-phase.
Okay.
So back to our timeline and approach, as the civil engineer, I think utility coordination is always better served to start early. So the folks that are on the technical review, TRT, technical review team that typically review development plans in the county, getting with them to prior to submitting plans at the design stage to, ask those questions of, hey, this is what we expect our needs to be, what provisions might we need to take? I was having a conversation the other day with Michael Hesse at the sewer department, and asked him about this site and said, hey, is there sewer on Lewis Ferry Road? And so we talked about that a little bit. It sounds like the existing barn doesn't have any sewer, and the current office building does, and may not meet their current code for how long the laterals need to be. So we're thinking about, maybe the building needs to shift a little bit closer to the road to meet their sewer lateral length. But sewer is available. Work with Jim Carter all the time at Plant Board and Brian over there for water. So starting that process early so that when those plans come across their desk at the review stage, they already have talked to me and they know what we're trying to accomplish, and it's not any new information. Trying not to give them any surprises.
Yeah, so we can start out with a facility review prior to
Right.
full construction documents being
Well,
prepared.
one of the things that was mentioned, and this is future, but it's always good to think about. One, could the future hold for John electric vehicles, EVs, and would there be a potential for at some point the possibilities of charging stations? Don't know, but the future's moving that way, and so some of the vehicles that could be a possibility. Two, could solar be a potential use for overall electric? Three, would geothermal be a good a means to save as well? So those are all kind of ideas that have been talked to us about. So I'd like to keep those things on the table, as not saying we will or we won't, but just as possibilities as part of the design, as you said, the upfront design, especially with the plant board and electric.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned geothermal, because when we were talking about the conditioned or non-conditioned space, I was kind of running that through my head. And I think at the front end, leaving all the options open and exploring the the pros and cons and weighing, what the benefits of the project are. What are the long-term maintenance responsibilities that go with those types of systems versus conventional, traditional methods. You can never fully future-proof anything, but we understand that what you're doing today is likely to needs to serve the needs for generations.
For years,
This is a
yeah.
40 or 50
Yeah,
year
yeah.
facility.
Yeah, this one is 60 years old now.
Exactly. It is definitely beyond its functional life and design span. But Michelle, do you have any thoughts or input on EV, solar or geothermal?
Well, those are systems that we have lots of experience with, have done on other facilities. I think we would usually take an approach during the design phase to do a life cycle cost analysis and compare the upfront cost to the long-term operating cost for your specific facility. And that will help in making a decision on which types of systems and which route we want to go with the design.
Very good. Okay. All right, let's start with John Mitchell. Questions?
No, I'm good, Judge.
Okay, Squire Tracy.
I do have a question for John. Hey, John, obviously we've talked about the maintenance facility per se. And I think Bobby brought it up, the fact that, you could look at doing a garage as far as maintenance and then part for storage. Am I right to think that if this is just a maintenance facility that your vehicles will be stored outside?
Yeah, but I'm kind of on the same page as you. I was looking at something, like that. One end of it is maintenance, the other end is going to be storage. That's what I kind of seen in some ways, but then, that's where it comes into the phase is there enough room to do it right there? Do we have to go build another building over here in the corner? The layout plan is going to be the biggest thing to figure out and make sure everything will fit the way we want it to.
Right. And I think that goes back to, it's just instrumental to look at it almost as a blank piece of property minus the admin office, the current admin office. I know Bobby's touched on Georgetown quite a bit, and I know we toured it. And, I think there's a lot of detail in their plan that could potentially benefit us per se, especially when it comes to storing the equipment.
Yeah, it seems like most of theirs is stored, open air outside. I don't know. I mean, there's
Right.
100 different ways. It's just trying to make it all fit.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like I said, you're kind of you hate to say a dilemma or a pickle, but again, we have to make sure we operate or continue to operate while the project is going on. So.
Yeah, and that's where timing comes in too. I mean,
Right.
And I don't see a whole lot of construction that could go on, wintertime, really. I mean, if it's in close quarters with, me loading 15 trucks with salt trying to get out of here, we still have to think about that too.
Right. I mean, realistically thinking about it, just looking at the date that we're at now, knowing things are being pushed back 6 to 9 months, ideally, we're looking at next year at this time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, John.
Miss Annie?
No questions. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Okay, Stephen?
I'm good, Judge.
Okay, Lambert?
What your prior projects timelines, are they running on good or over or?
So the projects I've got, there's a project on the front here that I put on here that's a little bit relevant, is this Millersville City Hall project. It's the open truss 2-story structure there. It's a city hall, but some of the things that made it relevant was, it was about a $3.5 million addition, it's 12,500 square feet. I managed that project as the PM. We started the design in 2017, and they were occupied that facility in the summer of 2020, which was right in line with our schedule, because that was their existing city hall that also housed their fire department. There's a pre-engineered metal building, and in the back, so they had their city administrative offices, and in the back they had the fire department, and then Public Works was on the same property in a separate metal building in the rear of the property. And so we had to maintain access for police, which was also
Kinda like what
police,
we're doing
fire.
here.
We had to maintain access for Public Works, all their administrative and billing, Parks and Rec, city recorder, clerk, they all were in there. And we left part of the building and they worked in there up to a point. We built a demising wall, then we had to get them out. We put some temporary office trailers out in front of the site. So it was a huge site logistics exercise. That was on like a 5.5 acre site. And we were doing quite a bit of earthwork there too, because we were reconfiguring their parking lot, added a new courtroom for, I think 120 seats. And that project did come in a little bit over budget, but it came in on schedule. The budgetary issues were largely, in fact, due to the price of materials changing from when we started early design in 2017 and then really building it in 2020. Kind of drove to that. But they're pleasing. The last time I was down in Tennessee, went by there and stopped and talked to the mayor and the city manager, and they're in that space and using it now, and they're thrilled with it. And I think our proposal actually included a reference in there for the city manager and mayor. If y'all are interested in talking to them about how I did on that.
I think I was through there last weekend.
In Millersville?
Yeah, but I didn't stop.
All right, you got anything else?
No.
I'd like to say something to that real quick.
Yeah.
Not to undermine your previous interviewee, but we're a little more optimistic about metal buildings, which we're in a slightly different market than this market. We're in Pulaski County. We have like Todd Metal Buildings and some local manufacturers that are still a bit faster than 6 to 9 months. So we're actually having a harder time with electrical and switch gears. So I was trying to listen throughout this, and I'd like Michelle's opinion, but depending on if you're bringing a lot of welding into this and bringing a lot of heavy electrical and EV power and things like that, depending on the size of the switch gears, kind of dictate the timeline on those. Michelle, do you agree? Like, we were having a very hard time finding the 3,000 amp service.
What I'm seeing is it's actually a little bit all over the map, that sometimes the big equipment is available, sometimes it's the little stuff that's not available, but I've seen it both ways. So it's, what I'm finding is it's just incredibly unpredictable.
Yeah. Okay. Robert, before I get to you.
I think Squire Tracy.
Oh, Squire Tracy? Okay. Squire.
Thanks, Judge. I just forgot to thank Bobby and his team for being here. I just want to thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you.
We haven't talked about pricing, your fees. Tell us how your fees work.
Well, it sounds like the contract and fee proposal timeframe is going to be expedited. So we may not have as much time to have that pre-scoping discussion and really nail down. But generally, our fees will be a fixed fee basis. We'll put together a lump sum proposal that specifically lists what services are included in that. And our expectation at this point would be that could either go through construction documents or through construction administration. But since the idea is out there of a CM and we don't really know what their scope is, I think we could make some assumptions for what their role would be during design, but that we should probably not include a construction admin fee because we wouldn't know what level of involvement we would have. And that would be what do you think? I mean, how would we forecast a CA fee without knowing the CM's involved.
Yeah, I think it's valid.
And then, hearing what their fees proposals are, there's probably quite a bit of overlap in what services we could offer as an architectural and engineering consultant during construction that the CM could. So maybe there's give and take during that phase, but for design, we will give you a proposal through construction documents and permitting on a fixed fee basis that includes all the architectural design, engineering, geotechnical. I'll coordinate with Robert on or Jared Stevens directly on what the survey part will be and what's going to be provided, because we wouldn't.
I'll reach out to you. I'll talk to the judge about it.
So it would be very explicit in terms of what we are including in our fee, and what, if there was anything that we identified that may become additional services or could be needed, but we're not sure, we would list that in the proposal, and we could provide alternate fees for that as well. But our basic scope of services will be a lump sum.
So Judge Wells and the committee, so this design team as it relates to fees will present based on the assumption that the court will hire a CM, correct? And then if the court does not hire a CM, then we would do a contract amendment back through fiscal court to cover those other services, correct? I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
No,
Well, the court's already said they want to see him, so I think
Right.
that's pretty much for
But-
sure.
We don't have a proposal yet, so I'm just, there's nothing been turned in to my knowledge, so.
Judge,
Yeah,
quick question, Bobby. Obviously, it appears that we're going to try to make a decision pretty quick. How soon can you get those numbers to us so we can have that to make an informed decision?
I think looking at, you said the fiscal court meets next Wednesday. How far in advance of that date do you need it? 'Cause
I have to have documents to the clerk by this Friday.
it's Friday. Then we.
Judge, when are you wanting to make a decision?
well, I would say by Friday or at the end of Friday.
So we'd need them we'd need them by whenever you want to do the meeting, the committee meeting, or
As soon as you
whenever you
get it.
want to discuss.
As you get
We can get to work on that, immediately after this meeting with the team here and start putting together a scope and fee proposal. Are you expecting to look at those fees from all the firms as part of the selection process, or do you think you all will make a selection and then go into negotiations with that chosen firm?
I was thinking that we would go into negotiations, but we have to have a frame of reference to go in negotiations.
And one
Don't you
thing,
think that in that, Robert, that's normally how we do it, isn't it?
That's correct. In addition to just the fees, I would need a contract to present to the court as well.
yes,
as part
so
of that. Okay.
we would handle that, and the way that the contract would work is OHM would be the prime consultant. We would contract directly with the fiscal court, and then our other consultant partners would be sub-consultants to us, and we would carry their contract. So
Okay.
all the legal paperwork would come directly through me. We're a big firm. We've got all the insurance and all those requirements in place, terms and conditions. So I can move pretty quickly on that. I mean, part of my goal, Judge, and we've met and we've talked before, is and this may be something that differentiates us from some of the competition a little bit, is that I'm committed to developing an office here for OHM and being here for the long term. I'm not looking for a one and done project. I'm looking to be a part of the local community and the business community here for
You live
the rest
here.
of my life. I live here. So this will be at the very top of my priority list right out of the gate. I'm still looking for that first public sector project, but that's going to continue to be part of my business model and plan is to work for the community. So.
Okay. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
sir.
Appreciate it. And Todd and Michelle up there, thank you. So Robert, you,
Yeah, I just want to say it's obvious you have done your homework. And you have watched our process up to this point. I do really appreciate the initial code review. That's very helpful. Appreciate it. And, you know, this is a relationship that requires communication. This truly is a long-term relationship, you know, between the court, staff, and then you all. So, you know, being able to speak freely and openly with a consultant is the best way to work through a you know, multi-million-dollar project. So, but you did a great job today, and thank you for all the upfront work that you did.
Some assumptions are going to be incorrect.
Oh, no, I understand. I've made a few marks,
Yeah,
but
right.
no, you're.
I've learned a
you did
little
great
bit
job.
sitting here, like, oh, no.
One other piece that I want to ask you about. If you make a mistake in your drawings and you make a mistake, who's that? Does that come back on us or does that come back on you? If your design is, or you ordered something wrong, who covers that?
That is an interesting question. I mean, we are obviously responsible for all of our work product, our signed and sealed deliverables, and all the contents therein. And OHM is responsible for all the work product that's provided through our sub-consultants. So we stand behind that and take full responsibility for the accuracy and completeness of the documentation. You know, we're all human, mistakes happen, things get missed. All of us have done it. We carry full, you know, professional liability, errors and omissions insurance, all that type of stuff that we hope to never have to use, but we do have a full risk management policy and all that. And, you know, sometimes it's not all, if things go wrong on a project, it's not always immediately obvious whose responsibility it is. My objective in any kind of conflict is to always try to resolve that at the lowest level possible. You know, avoid escalating to attorneys and courtrooms and mediators if at all possible. You know, if it's something between the architect and the contractor and then there's a finger pointing exercise, you know, my goal is going to be to work with your staff to resolve that as amicably and as quickly as possible without any kind of escalation. But at the end of the day, to answer your question, we stand behind everything we issue with our letterhead, our logo, our stamp and seal.
And to follow that, you know, you all are all aware that the inspectors have their own little niches and things they want to see that may not necessarily be in the code. So you all will have to serve as our advocate for your design and stick to it.
If we've got just a minute, that brings up a good question. You know, as far as this being a county-owned project, does the development plan process still run through planning and zoning and TRT and all that, the same kind of flow chart?
It should. Now, since this is in the city, it's exempt from zoning. and
Right,
those
I mean, we didn't have
processes.
to have planning commission or anything, but.
Right, but I do think it ought to route that way. That's how we did the fire station, the sheriff's office. That way it brings everyone together and I think the government ought to follow its own
And it
rules.
gives us, I agree, and it gives a consistent process that we're all familiar with, and we're not making anything up as we go along.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, we've just completed that one project and we would follow that same process.
Absolutely.
So.
Okay. Everybody, thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you. This concludes this interview, and we have another one tomorrow, I believe.
9:30?
9:30?
I believe so.
9:30 tomorrow. 9:30 tomorrow,
Let me
everybody.
double check it real fast before we hang up
Yeah,
here.
let me know for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Robert,
see.
I'll check it, make sure.
Yes, 9 a.m., excuse me.
9 a.m. Okay, 9 a.m. tomorrow. 9 a.m. everybody. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
This
Thank you.
interview is over.